Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I take a look at all the board games that are not new to me that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. So this one of course covering the first half of September 2022. So most of these games are on the lighter end of the spectrum, you know, that medium to lightweight, because most of my brain power has been invested in playing heavier games that are new to me. So there's going to be some bigger games when it comes to the monthly roundup. So before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on what I've been playing. So I started off with a 2-player game of Pergamon. This is a recently fulfilled Kickstarter project, and this is like a reprint essentially, because Pergamon is an older game. This is a lighter game, despite the more dry looking visual aesthetic, I suppose. But what a fun game this is, as you are trying to acquire these artifacts. And you can see here these tiles are basically come in different artifacts and they're split in half. So you actually have to start lining up these different artifacts to make them join together. And you're trying to get points for doing so. But what I love about this game is how you acquire money. Because at the start of the round, you are going to reveal a couple of these cards, which is going to show the potential of the money on the reverse side of these cards. And then you're going to be putting your meeple somewhere on this track to show how much money you're going to take from that bag. So you can either go really early in here and get less money, but guaranteed that money, or you can go later in the row and potentially go without. But if there is a lot of money in those bags, then you can potentially walk away with a bit of a jackpot to keep your funds going throughout the game. Very simple other than that, but that one key mechanism is enough for me to make this one stand out. Really enjoying it. And with the 2-player game, it's not really the optimal player count. However, there is a good game mode where the game substitutes a player or proxies a player through this dummy piece, which will always land on a certain spot depending on the cards, and take some of that money. So it's not going to be so open, and it keeps the game feeling nice and tight. But definitely an alternative game for that lighter, medium end of the spectrum, and only takes around half an hour to 45 minutes to play with some pretty cool decisions. So I'm very happy with the way that Pergamon turned out. Next up, I played a 2-player game of Sealand. So this is a less talked about Kramer game. It's a co-design with somebody who I'm not so familiar with. But this one, definitely one that's flown under the radar. Nobody really talks about this one anymore. And this is like a pretty abstract game, I suppose, as you are placing these tiles out on this map here. They're hexes, and they're going to come in 2 different types. So you've got the actual the crops on those hexes, which come in 3 different types and come in different points values. But you also collect these tiles where you can put your little windmills on them, and when your windmills are completely surrounded, they're going to cash out and get the points based on the crops surrounding it. But there's a few tricks to this one where you need to have at least 2 different types of crops surrounding you, otherwise you're going to score nothing. But if you have all 3 types around you, then you're going to get a bonus of 5 points. And it all boils back to this very simple drafting system where you're collecting tiles based on the money you have. However, the money you have is always in relation to what somebody else has. You can't really run away when it comes to point scoring. And I like the different methods you can do in this one. You can do like quick little grabs and sneak in hexes and get a small bunch of points that way, or you can really build up to these big turns. And that played a big part in our game with this one, because there's this variant you can play, which I will always choose to play with, where 2 times you have 2 opportunities during the game where you can basically declare that the current placement you've just done will be your biggest cash out. And you'll basically place your marker to say, on this turn I've got 30 points, I'm going to guess that I'm not going to get more than that. And at the end of the game, whoever's declared their points marker and has the highest 2 or 3 slots are going to get an extra amount of points. And that really turned out to hurt me, because early in the game I chose to declare my marker, and I think it was 29 points, which is a pretty good score. But my opponent managed to get 30 and 31 points. They got a big boost at the end of the game. I don't think it was enough to swing out. I did end up just grabbing the win, but it's a very nice game, and I was surprised how well it worked at 2 players. So yeah, definitely a game that scales well. Another one with very simple, clean rule set, and I'm surprised this one has faded into obscurity, because it is rock solid, and I like it a lot. So that is Sealand, another solid game of that one. I also played I think it was another 2-player game of Acropolis. So yeah, most of my games this month have been at that 2-player count. Acropolis, one that I've been talking about quite a lot recently. I believe it was top of the charts on my last month's roundup, so that's how much I like this one, considering this one is a very simple puzzly tile placement game. Placing these hex tiles down, but the hexes are kind of conjoined, so there's like 3 hexes together, and then you're spanning your map out, trying to get the most optimal puzzle, because all the different colours score in different ways, but you can also build on your previous tiles and get bigger multipliers and get stone for doing so. I think I had a pretty good game at this one. It ended up scoring a lot of points, getting some big multipliers, and really went for that, that vertical stacking. Always had loads of quarry tiles or the stone to play with, so I could always get the tiles I wanted. And yeah, just a lovely game that you can play in 25 minutes. And we had very good depth to time ratio with this one, and I'm absolutely delighted with this design, and I've not had a single negative experience with it yet. So yeah, regardless of the player count, always plays very well in a very succinct amount of time. That is Acropolis. Definitely one of the best games, if not it's going to be, well, I'm pretty certain it's going to be in the top 10 for me this year in terms of 2022 releases. Also played a 2-player game of Splitter. So this is a game that nobody is talking about, and they should be, because this is a delightful little roll and write game, and just a throwback to the traditional roll and write games with very little rules overhead. This one, you are just rolling the pair of dice, and then you are going to be writing a number in one of the sides on this grid, and you're going to have to write the other number on the mirrored side of the other one, like this. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to get all the ones in isolation, you're trying to get 2s and pairs, you're trying to get 3s and trios, and so on, and they're going to be your points at the end of the game, until every single square is filled. And there's even some bonus incentives to go for, such as getting the bigger multipliers on these stars, because your points will be doubled. Now, we had a very interesting game, because although we were, hiding our sheets from each other and playing in secret, we almost played an identical array of placement. So it was all exact same, apart from one number, and that one number swung the points massively, because I managed to get a group of, I think it was a 5 or 6 on the double score to get those huge multipliers, whereas my opponent did not, and that is what determined the winner. A really nice one. You're talking about a 10-15 minute game, which is a brilliant experience, and I highly advocate picking up a copy of this one for dirt cheap if you can get your hands on it. Lovely game, and been consistently hitting the table since I picked this one up. So that is Splitter. And very much in the same vein, very simple roll and write game, I managed to get a 2-player game of Rustling Leaves played. So I introduced this one to a player who's not played it before, and I believe they had a good time with it. I think we both went for very different strategies. I went for because there's a bunch of different maps here, you can play different modes of the game. But I went for a kind of a shoot the moon kind of thing, where you want to try to tick off all these rainbows inside the box. And if you do, you get a massive 30 points. That's pretty much where all my points came from. Whereas my opponent took a bit more of a diverse route. But our game was definitely a low-scoring one, because as soon as the game started, we kept on rolling those big grid sizes, meaning that we're constantly drawing like 3x4s or 4x4 grids, and that was just completely swallowing the whole game map really quickly. Normally you're rolling lower numbers, so you get more turns essentially, whereas this one we didn't. But it's really fun, and yeah. If you watch my content, you probably know I've talked about this one to death, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you can just see it's still hitting the table, and I'm enjoying it a lot with, definitely not waning on that one. I also played I believe it was a 4-player game actually, it might have been a 3-player game, of Savannah Park. And introduced this one to one new player, the other one already played it, and another one, I think it went down very well. And so this one is another Kramer and Kiesling co-design. One where you are basically, you have a bunch of these tiles placed on this big map here. All these hex tiles are going to go randomly, and then turn by turn, when it's your turn, you can select one of those tiles and move it to another space, with the idea of trying to create the biggest groups of the same animals and multiply them with the watering holes within those animal tiles. Now, the whole game in itself is very puzzly. It's quite a frustrating game, but in a good way, because people always move tiles that you're not quite ready for them to move. But in this game, was definitely one of the, well, I think it's my worst performance by far. I did not do well at all. I was very thrown off because one of my opponents chose the wild tile. So there's this one tile in there that has all the animal types on it and has a watering tile on it as well, which is kind of like the golden piece. It's the best tile by far. And I believe that was the first tile placed in the game. So that really did completely dictate the pacing of the game, and that did not work in my favour at all. But my opponents managed to do way better than I did, so fair play to them. But yeah, love this one. Very nice, family weight, entry-level game. That's just a delight to play. So yeah, Savannah Park still going strong, and you can see consistently hitting the table. Also played a two-player game of Cascadia. Just a pleasant one, this one. You know, you probably know all about it. Made my top 10 of last year. Lovely little tile drafting game where you're drafting them in combination with these tiles or these tokens. You're trying to build up these terrains. You're trying to put the tokens on those tiles based on the scoring criteria of these animal cards. Lovely game. Blown up massively, and I think it's delightful. So yeah, that is Cascadia. Again, really good game. Nothing more to say on that one. Played a couple of games that I don't own myself. So the first one being a 3-player game of Aquatica. So I've only played Aquatica once before. Did really enjoy that first play. Thought it worked very nicely. And this second time we played with, I believe it was the expansion, which I think is called Cold Waters or something like that, which changes one facet of the game. Now, I will say that that expansion played next to no part in our game. I think everybody completely ignored those bonus cards you can collect. But I still really love this card sliding system as you're acquiring these characters. And they have these little notches on them. And you can activate these notches when you want, which are basically proxy your currency. So I love that. You don't actually have physical currency. You just have these cards which are present at the time, and they're constantly sliding up and down. You can bank them for endgame points, and it's just a nice little engine builder that works well. So yeah, definitely for a quick game, takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play. This is a solid one, and I do like it. So yeah, first and second play went really well, but I definitely did ignore a whole portion of it, which is probably the wrong thing to do. But despite that, I still enjoyed it. So that was Aquatica. More tile placement goodness here with Nova Luna. So I played a 2-player game of this one, a little Uwe Rosenberg and puzzly game. As you are placing these tiles, trying to line them up, trying to trigger them, because you can see here these tiles all have conditions on them, like this one here wants to be touching 4 other red tiles, or you can basically create a path through other red tiles to trigger that. And you're trying to race to get all your discs played, and based on this time track system, which is a great mechanism shared with a game called Patchwork, but I actually prefer Nova Luna to Patchwork, despite that one being a great game. This one is fantastic, and it was only a 2-player game, but I would say I actually think I played the best I've ever played before. Very little wasted movement, and I got it done in very few turns actually, which is quite nice, because I'm normally not the best at this game. I'm not bad at it, but I'm not great at it either, and this is definitely one of those games that I like to be good at. I like to do my best and then play as efficiently as I can. So as Nova Luna, yeah, another one. These kind of lighter weight tile placement games are doing well for me at the moment, because they're so breezy, easy to get to the table, but still have the weight of the decisions behind them. So that is Nova Luna. Bit of a strange one now. We played a 4-player game of Catan. So I haven't played Catan for probably 5 years. And even then I didn't like it, to be honest. Now, yeah, we played this one at the Games Club after a bigger game of Brazil, actually. So we played, a 4-player game this one, and completely core version, no expansions or anything like that. So if you're not aware of Catan, again, I don't want to go into this too much, but it's a kind of a random game as you're rolling these dice, collecting resources based on where you've put these buildings, then using those resources to build new buildings, build roads and that kind of thing, to race to get to 10 points. Now, I kind of almost forgot about some of the mechanisms in this one, not like there's many, but to be honest, this one did really fall flat on its face for me, and I believe probably 3 out of the 4 players that played it were not too impressed by the experience. Very lucky, quite frustrating at times as you're constantly rolling the wrong numbers to collect resources that you don't really want. Yes, there is a trading aspect to the game, but that trading, it almost feels a bit forced. there's not enough smoke and mirrors to pull tricks or trying to strike these good deals. It's pretty obvious about what people want and what you're willing to spend to do that. So yeah, not too impressed with this one. All the card draws, because you can buy these cards, they're all very boring. And to be honest, I do not think this game's aged well. And I'm not saying that to be edgy or cool. Most of my games a lot of my games are from the 90s. But yeah, this one, I just do not think it's aged well. I think it's very little decision space, very lucky, very swingy, and just not very fun, to be honest, because it takes about an hour and the decisions you make are minimal. So yeah, unfortunately not a great experience with that one, but something different, I suppose, to get to the table. On to the last few games now, and these are all lighter ones. We played I think it was a 3 or 4 player game of SixNIMT. Classic card game about trying to not collect these bull's heads. You're playing these cards in simultaneously, I suppose, revealing them, resolving them in numerical order, and whoever's played the 6th card in a row of numbers collects all the existing ones into their hands as negative points, which are obviously not a good thing. Absolute classic. Love this one. If you don't know about this game, I highly encourage you to invest in a copy, because I've never had a bad game of it. It's great. You can play as many rounds as you want. Very quick. It takes about 10 minutes. You can play multiple rounds. Just a great experience. Lots of laughs. And yeah, really good experience. So that is SixNIMT. Also played a 2-player game. Of course, this is a 2-player only game of Hana Makoji. So this has been one of my favourite 2-player games for a number of years. And I always played this with my mum, and we ended up getting very good at it, actually, because we played it consistently. We had this bit of a meta game going on. We really increased each other's skill, I suppose, by getting more and more competitive. And we went for a long time without playing it, and needless to say, our skills did rapidly depreciate, and we're nowhere near as good or efficient as we were when we used to play it. But it was nice to get it back. We had some very poor plays, and we're not playing well at all. I think I managed to just squeeze the win, but just through pure coincidence, really. But yeah, it's interesting to see how well you can get better at this game. And when you first play it, that might not seem like it's the case. But an absolute classic 2-player game, always ranked well for me, and definitely considered one of the best 2-player games ever, in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the second edition of this does, or the Geisha's Road version, because I think that's fulfilling soon. It'd be interesting to see if this up to the pedigree of Hana Makoji. Last couple of games now, the first one being Rapido, another one that ranked pretty well last month on my monthly roundup, considering how light and simple this game is. So this is a reprint or a re-implementation of Rainer Knizia's classic Escape game, or it had some other game names as well. But it's essentially his twist on the classic game Can't Stop, which is a push your luck game. This one, you're rolling a pair of dice. The dice go from an X, which is basically the bus symbol, up to a 7 on one die, and I think it's an X up to a 6 on the other one. And you're trying to race up these steps. If you roll a double, you instantly move up the steps. If you go bust, you're going to fall down the steps and lose your turn, essentially. But you can bank a high number, or a number you want, and place it on the staircase in the middle here. And if it lands, or if your dice lasts on that staircase by the time it gets back round to you, then you automatically move up a number of steps depending on the value of that step. I've actually recorded a review of this one already. I may upload that one in the next week or so. But this is a fantastic game, spoiler alert. It is great. I think it's up there with one of the greats push your luck games. It might even be my new favourite push your luck game. It's just wonderful. It plays in about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer depending on the player count. Scales well. It does play 2, but I'd say always play with at least 3. And it has that multi-dimensional push your luck games going on at once. So yeah, definitely encourage you to get a copy of this one if you can. You may have to get it in a foreign language, probably like French or German or something. But the rules are so easy, you're never going to forget them anyway. So, download a PDF and you're good to go. And the final game I played is a game of Air, Land and Sea. But the mode I played was the Epic mode, which came with the new Spies, Lies and Supplies. It's kind of a standalone expansion, I suppose. But this one allows you to combine both the original both the Air, Land and Sea games to do 5 different regions. So you can do like the air, land and sea, and then you can do like the diplomacy, the intelligence, or any combination of the 5. You play with those cards, you start with bigger hands, and you basically have to acquire fewer points, but you're obviously playing through through a lot more cards than you would do if you're just playing with the three combat zones. Now, I was really intrigued to see how this worked, and I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go. I do not think it's anywhere close as strong as just playing them in isolation, because you almost have too many options and you can't really plan what you're going to do until it gets to the later stages of the game. And on top of that, it becomes a lot more harder to decide whether you want to withdraw from the current battle or not. And you'll probably end up just fighting until the bitter end because there are so many variables. Whereas in the standard game, you can pretty much make quite educated decisions whether you want to keep on fighting on or withdraw and not give your opponent as many points. But again, if you don't know the games, that's probably not going to mean much to you. But a two-player game that I rate extremely high. Very clever card interaction, a lot of kind of bluffing, misguiding, misdirection, that kind of thing. Very clever game. And normally those kind of games with powers on cards and interacting cards don't work for me. This one is so precise and condensed that it just manages to have a spark of magic that's hard to put your finger on. So that is Air, Land and Sea. Again, love the game, but the epic mode isn't as good as the original. So there we have it. Those are all the board games that I've been playing during the first half of September 2022. As I said, most of my effort has been going on playing new games, which are bigger, more crunchy and meaty ones. So I've got some really good ones to talk about in the next month or so. But there we have it. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.